Hi, everybody. Mudslide Mac here, coming to you with my dice control, dice setting ideas, concepts. Uh, yeah, just kind of rapping and talking about dice control and dice sets and what all that means. Thought we'd throw few tosses here, maybe track a few things, talk about dice sets a little bit, and practicing and really kind of focusing in a little bit on my mantra, if you will. If you've watched any of my videos all the way to the end, I always end it with stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and remember luck has got very little to do with it. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that idea that I throw out there. And I may have missed once or twice, but I'm pretty sure always I end a video with luck's got very little to do with it, which is what I believe dice control and dice setting is all about. Um, I know that. Well, I'll throw it out because it's kind of important to me in the whole thing here. But I call it dice control. I have referred to it as dice influence. Uh, Most folks on YouTube now who talk about dice setting and dice craps refer to what was always called dice control back when I first started out with this. They refer to it more as dice influence because that is a more acceptable term and creates less controversy. Because, quite frankly, it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the average craps player to really control the next shot. In other words, control the number that's going to happen next. And it's really, dice influence is a pretty fair term, but I do believe, and I do know from experience, that when you've really studied it and trained yourself hard enough at it, that uh, you can influence and control. You can do both. Most of the time, you're influencing the dice, but oftentimes you're actually getting into a real control. You may not be able to call the next shot, the next number, but you're going to be close, and you're going to, within a few tosses, hit that number. And that, when you stop and think about what the probabilities, what the actual difficulty of that all is, that's control in my book. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is dice sets. There's, in my way of looking at it, there's really only two types of dice sets. It really only falls into two categories, and that is a V set category and a 7-axis set category. What you see uh, right here is a 7-axis configuration or dice set. And you might be going, well, Mudslide, what do you mean by that? What are you talking about? 7-axis. Okay, I'll explain that to you. When you consider that when you put two dice together like this and throw them in a manner that is consistent with the understanding of dice control, you're going to want them to move in that direction along that axis. In other words, tumbling, or excuse me, through the air, rotating through the air like that. Okay? So that is the axis. The numbers or the faces of the dice that you put on that axis can form a couple of different can be placed in a couple of different ways. If you place them in what I refer to as a 7-axis, you're putting them on that axis so that the numbers, say 6-1, 6-1, that's a 7-axis, correct? If you did it this way, it would be 3, 4, 3, 4 for 7. If you did it this way, it would be 5, 2, 5, 2 for 7. That is a 7-axis set. It doesn't matter what faces are in whatever position they might be. Easy way to understand this is if the 6 and 1, which is obviously 7-axis, if they're on the axis, it doesn't matter what you do with the faces, that's a 7-axis set. It also doesn't matter if two numbers are facing this way or if they're touching each other, but if they're the same two numbers, 5s and 5s, 4s and 4s, 6s and 1s, that's a 7-axis set. Many different combinations can be derived by doing that to take advantage of your toss mechanics and minimize the 7 and maximize box numbers, all right, or winning numbers. The other type of set that is possible is what's called a V set. That right there is a 2V set. This is a 3V set. And all you're doing is you're taking two numbers and you're putting them in a position where the center the numbers touching each other equals the numbers on the top. Not always on the top, but it equals the same number that's in the top face, okay? That's a 3V set. This is going to favor 6s and 8s. At least that's what it's promoted to do, all right? That is a 2V set. Is promoted to emphasize 4s and 10s, all right? And then from there, let's take it one step further, and you've got the cross 6 set, which is it is a V set, because you got, in this instance, you've got 8 and 6 as the face numbers, along with 2s and 12s. And internally, you're going to have, in this instance, okay, let me show you. This is really critical. Okay, there's a 6 in the center. You see that? 2 and 4. There's 2 and 4. There's 5 and 3. If you put the 5s and the 3s together, you still have a cross 6 set. That's what makes a V set. Is what's in the center. It's just the same way what makes a 7-axis set. It's what's in the center. What are those axis numbers? If you're new to all of this and you haven't really studied and fooled around with presetting dice, this might be confusing. But seriously, every every set that you can put together to give yourself an advantage is going to be either a V type set, which is what I just described, a 3V, across 6, or a 2V, or a 7-axis set. I mean, that's the basics. Every set you can come up with that to give yourself an advantage derives from that. The next step, the next thing that's important is understanding that in order to make those presets work, you have to have mechanics in a grip that will deliver the two cubes to the other end of the table so that they land as flat as possible and come up to the back wall and back with as little movement as possible. That is what gives the preset the opportunity to be a success in minimizing the 7 and maximizing the box numbers. So, all that being said, let's toss a few. This happens to be a 3V set. How do I know it's a 3V set? Because I'm looking at an 8 on top and a 6-1 there. I know that underneath there's going to be 3s and a V. Actually, that was wrong. I said 6-1. It should have been 5-1. I was incorrect in that. Let's start that again. Okay, so 6-2. If I see an 8 and an 8, then I know I got a 3V set. All right, so let's throw a 3V set, but let's throw it this way. Let's have those 3s facing the target, 4s facing me or where my thumb would be, or on, facing the wall, and the 6-2 on top. Now I'm going to be utilizing a pinch grip from here because from the stick right, for me right now, that's what I've been focusing on. And really all I want from this is that I can keep those two dice together, as close together as I possibly can to the landing zone, which, if you can see it, is that little brown circle down at the other end of the table. I want them to get there. I want these two dice to be as together as possible, so that they were glued together until that landing spot, and hope that they're not off slightly with a slight angle that would cause them to scatter too much. And I hit the puck, but I did get a 5-1, which, based on the set, is the primary number. It's a positive hit. All right. So what did I say? I got a 6. All right, so let's light up to 6 as my point. And let's see if I can keep throwing that set and hit. It should hit. Now, inside numbers and an occasional outside number should be what I'm looking for here. But let's kind of see. Again, I'm going with this pinch grip. I think you can kind of see it, at least from behind anyway. That was a much better toss. And there's a 4-1-5. So we'll mark that we threw a 5. And we'll just know that one of this 4 was there. This 1, I'm not keeping track of which die is which, but that was probably a 1 off axis result. And when you talk about on axis and off axis, again, this is controversial, not controversial, but it's debatable as to what we're talking about here. But to me, it's the way the dice stopped moving based on the way they started. Not that's the way I think you should look at it. Okay, let's throw a few more. Talked a bunch about sets and my concepts, my ideas. And there's another 6, 5, 1, which is the point. So we'll mark that point with a red chip. And we're coming out again. So that wasn't bad. I think I've thrown 3 tosses and we're a pass line winner. But let's throw a 7 axis set. Here's a classic. Most people that have looked into the dice control at all or dice setting at all will look at that and go, oh, that's a hardway set. It's a hardway set, 7 axis, 6, 6, 1 on the axis, and you've got a pair of numbers all the way around. And the sort of classic way to throw it is the 5, 4, 5, 4. It can be thrown any way you wish, which could, again, depending on your mechanics and your skill level, can emphasize certain box numbers over others. The idea of this is if you get a primary hit, you're going to get a hardway. And if you get a 1 off axis hit, which we just have, you're going to get a number that will never disappoint you. Okay, so we've got an 11 coming out. So if we're coming out, that's obviously a good result because that's a winner on the pass line. I'll throw another one and I'll explain again what I was talking about with if one of the dice comes off axis, it's never going to be anything to be unhappy about. And there's a 3, 2, which is a 5. Okay, that is based on the way that set started. That is a single pitch. And this, again, this will definitely gives us the opportunity to talk about the controversy. This die, based on the way it started, double pitched. This die, based on the way it started, single pitched. But the result is a positive number. It's a 5 and can be referred to as a single pitch result. It's fine if one die double pitches and the other one single pitches. That's going to give you a good result. If you have one die that double pitches and the other one doesn't do a single pitch, you could have a negative result. All right, let's throw again. 5 is our point. I hit that target well. Okay, there's a 2, 1, 3. Mark the 3. All right, what happened here? Okay, this die stayed on axis and it was a double pitch again because the 5 was on top. This one came off axis. It doesn't matter. It came off axis and that created the 3, right? So let's say, let's describe that now. Why that one off axis and one on axis can never be a number you're going to be unhappy with. You may not like a 3, especially on a come out, but when you've established a point, a 3 does not hurt you. But here's the deal. With a 7-axis set, it doesn't matter whether it's 6s and 1s in the middle, 5s and 2s, or 4s and 3s. If one of them stays on axis and the other one comes off axis, there is absolutely no way that the result will be a 7. No way. It's impossible. This is a real key to why a 7-axis set can be an advantage based on your mechanics, the table surface, and so on and so forth. Okay? So you need to understand those things before you start playing. Well, excuse me, not before you start. You need to understand those things to realize how utilizing dice setting and repeatable mechanics in the throw or the toss and the grip can give you an advantage. Now let's just throw a couple more. We're still sticking with that 7. Let's try a different 7-axis set. Let's try one where the 6s are touching each other. Okay, now you have 2, 4, 4, 2. It could be 9, or it could be an 8. So you could have a 6, 8, 5, 9 favorable configuration with that set by putting the 6s or the 1s together in the center, or the 5s or the 4s or the 3s and the you follow what I'm saying? When you put it this way, that give this particular set is kind of considered to be a horn come out favorable set, especially if you're using maybe like a world bet or something like that. So there's a variety of things that you can. But our point is 5. All right, so let's do this. If our point is 5, let's see if we can. There we go. All right, there's a set that hopefully we're hoping would favor a 5 or perhaps a 6. Let's see. There's an 8, 4, hard 8. Let's see if we can't get a 5. That hard 8 ended up being a single pitch. Did that make sense to you? In other words, they started off this way and ended up that way. So that was a single pitch of one or the other. Probably this one. Because I forgot which one I put in the center, how I positioned the center die. Or center number, I should say. There's a yo. So this is an off-axis result. That is an on-axis result. There's a 4, 3, 1. Okay, so I had 2s together in the center. So this one was a double pitch. That's how we got that. But the result altogether was a yeah, it was a double pitch result on that die. This one stayed right on top's primary hit. And that's the thing. It's so kind of mind bending to understand that. And there's 516. The 5 was off axis, the 1 is on axis. All right, I'm just going to throw, how many minutes we got into this? 25 minutes. That's an awful long time. I mean, hopefully it's been entertaining enough that most of you have stuck around. There's a 9, 5, 4. Again, we got a 1 off axis. I'm going to stop here. I mean, because we've gone on long enough. Okay, this is an off axis. The 2 was inside. There we go. And this is a single pitch that way, off axis that way. That's how we got that result. So, just like we started out, I will repeat again. Luck has got very little to do with it. You need to study you need to study the 2 cubes. You need to understand and study the concept of numbers that are created by 2 6-sided cubes, the combinations, the probabilities, that basic math of those 2 cubes. You need to understand that really well. And then you need to get a grip on, or get a grasp of presets, what presets mean. And I think really to really understand that, you need to first understand there's really only 2 ways to set the dice: in a V configuration or a 7-axis configuration. That's it. I mean, everything else starts there. There's various different sort of, you can go on from there and get more detailed, but that's the basics. It's like saying, math is basically a configuration of 1 through 10. It's really kind of, that's the basics of it. And then really that landing flat, getting the dice to land flat in a consistent spot, and have repeatable mechanics and focus that enables you to do that, which is just a skill. It's like any sort of athletic skill, whether it's hitting a baseball with a bat, a golf ball with a club, a hockey puck with a hockey stick, a tennis ball with a tennis racket. It's a skill. You can learn how to do it. It takes time, it takes practice, but if you do, you can give yourself an advantage in the casino game of craps. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Let's slide out.